Hey everyone. On the story for today. I wanted an open marriage, now I'm pregnant, and my husband wants me gone for good. I, Diana, want to share my story as a cautionary tale so that others can learn from my mistake. At the time of this incident, I was 25 years old, and my husband Paul was 28. We had been in a relationship for nearly 3 years and had been married for 1. My husband is a hard-working man, a great provider and a wonderful, loving spouse. Everything I had ever dreamed of. Around a year into our marriage, my husband had a construction project that required him to be out of town for 3 weeks, including 2 weekends. During this time, we maintained daily FaceTime conversations and exchanged multiple texts because we both missed each other immensely. On the first weekend that my husband was away, 2 of my single girlfriends invited me to join them at a local club. Initially, I declined their invitation, but they persisted, saying they wanted me to be the designated driver as they planned to have a few drinks. Eventually I gave in, but I didn't inform my husband, mother, or older married sister because they would have strongly disapproved of my decision. We arrived at the club around 10:30 p.m., and the place was already lively with people dancing and enjoying drinks. My friends quickly immersed themselves in the fun while I remained on the sidelines at a round high-top table, simply observing their dancing and the other patrons. During one of the breaks from dancing, my friends brought their dance partners back to our table to rest and chat. During this time, another man, whom we'll call Joe, joined us for conversation. Joe was a friend of one of the guys at our table. When my friends and their dance partners returned to the dance floor, Joe remained at the table with me and we struck up a conversation. As the night went on, my girlfriends became quite intoxicated and created scenes at the club. Joe had to assist me in getting them to my car and generously offered to ride with me to help drop them off at their homes since he had come to the club with his friend. I agreed to drop him off at his place after we finished dropping my friends. I then drove Joe to his apartment, and he suggested we continue talking his friends. Initially I hesitated because I was happily married, but he persisted, saying come on, just for another 15 minutes. Reluctantly I agreed, knowing it was wrong and foreseeing what might happen. Once we were upstairs, we grabbed some sparkling water and sat on his couch, engaging in conversation. After just a few minutes of talking, Joe kissed me softly on the lips. And things escalated rapidly to the point where we became intimate just 5 minutes later. Afterward, I immediately recognized the gravity of my actions and told Joe that I could never see or speak to him again because I was happily married and felt overwhelmed with guilt. He expressed his understanding and regret, acknowledging that he had also made a mistake by being involved with another man's wife. We didn't exchange contact information, phone numbers or last names. We both lived in Los Angeles, approximately 20 miles apart, so the chances of us crossing paths again were slim. I foolishly believed I could get away with this one-time indiscretion, but I was mistaken. Several days passed and my period was overdue. It didn't arrive after 1 week, then 2. When my husband returned home, we quickly resumed our loving relationship, but I carried this dark secret within me. I knew that if I were pregnant, the baby belonged to Joe since he hadn't used protection, while my husband and I always had. In desperation, I went to the drugstore to purchase a home pregnancy test, and my worst fears were confirmed. I was pregnant with Joe's child. Overwhelmed and disgusted with myself, I needed to confide in someone. So I arranged a meeting with my mom and sister to share my situation and seek their advice. As I recounted what had transpired to my mom and sister, they reacted with profound disgust and anger. They both held deep affection for my husband and couldn't fathom why I would engage in such behavior. Our entire family was devoutly Catholic, and we were all committed to our faith. Infidelity was a taboo subject, viewed as a truly shameful act. I understood that from this point onward, I would be an outcast within my own family. Despite our Catholic faith, I confessed to them that I intended to have a termination because I couldn't risk losing my husband. My plan was to terminate the pregnancy the next time my husband was out of town, keep it a secret from him, and continue our relationship as if nothing had happened. My mother and sister vehemently objected to my decision. They insisted that I must be honest with my husband, and if I didn't tell him within the next 24 hours, they would meet with him and reveal the truth. They also firmly stated that having a termination was morally wrong and something I would regret for the rest of my life. I knew deep down that they were right, and I requested their presence when I talked to my husband because I needed their support. They agreed, and the following day we all gathered in our apartment, eagerly awaiting my husband's return from work. When he walked through the door, he greeted us warmly, calling us his 3 favorite ladies and giving us hugs and kisses. It brought tears to my eyes. He noticed my tears and the solemn expressions on our faces and immediately asked, "What's wrong? What happened? Is everything all right?" I informed him that I had something important to discuss and that he should sit down. He complied, sitting across from me on the couch, holding both my hands. That's when I began. Surprisingly, he didn't react with anger. Instead, he let go of my hands, stood up, and walked over to the stools at our kitchen counter. My mom and sister were in tears as I begged for his forgiveness, saying all the typical things people do when they've cheated, like, "I'm sorry, please forgive me, I love you, I'll do anything for you," and so on. I expected him to yell, use hurtful words, and demand details about the affair, but instead he remained completely silent, which made me feel even worse. Throughout my emotional outpouring, he remained silent, his gaze fixed on the floor, tears flowing down his cheeks. My mom and sister got up to hug him, and they were all crying. I felt terrible and utterly disgusted with myself. After taking a moment to collect himself, he went to the bathroom, splashed water on his face, dried it with a towel and returned to the living room. As he re-entered the room, I stood up to comfort him, but he raised both his palms and softly said no. He calmly explained that he needed some time away to think things through for a few days. I continued to attempt to get him to open up, but he remained silent. He packed a suitcase and left. I asked where he was going, and he replied that he would be in touch. Over the following week, I bombarded his phone with voicemails and texts, repeatedly expressing my sorrow and my desire for him to be a father to my child. Regrettably, he never responded. Instead, 1 week later, I received a call from his attorney informing me that my husband was initiating divorce proceedings. I was utterly devastated and sought solace from my mother and sister. My mom and sister consoled me and assured me that they would support me through this difficult situation and during my pregnancy. However, they made it abundantly clear that they were not pleased with me and were fully on my husband's side. They even mentioned their willingness to testify on his behalf during the trial if I chose to contest the divorce. For the following 2 weeks, I continued to call and text my husband, pouring out my love and pleading for the opportunity to meet face to face one more time. Unfortunately, he never responded. Instead, he relayed a message to me through his attorney, expressing his well wishes for me and our baby, but asserting his need to move forward in life without me. I was utterly crushed and spiraled into a deep depression. Approximately 2 months later, we all gathered in court for the hearing. As soon as I saw my husband for the first time since he left, I couldn't control my tears and I tried to rush toward him. However, my mom and sister held me back, offering consolation. Since I didn't contest the divorce and we had few assets to divide, the hearing was brief. As we left the courtroom, I again wanted to approach my husband, but his attorney guided him through a side exit into a meeting room to keep us apart. Update. Fast forward 2 years and I've been residing with my parents, raising a beautiful baby girl. My mom, sister and dad have been incredibly supportive and I couldn't have navigated this challenging experience without them. Recently, I started a part-time job as a clerk at the local library with plans to transition to full-time once my child is old enough to attend school. My ex-husband has moved on with his life and found a new girlfriend, and he seems very content. She's young, gorgeous, and comes from a great family. I'm genuinely happy for him, but at the same time I carry a deep sadness within me. Despite the joy my daughter brings me and the love I have for my family, there's a significant void in my heart due to the loss of my wonderful husband. Following the divorce, I reached out to Joe and informed him about my pregnancy. We underwent a NIP non-invasive prenatal testing that confirmed him as the father. He agreed to provide child support and has consistently met his obligations. However, I harbor no romantic feelings for him and in fact harbor resentment for the disruption he caused in my once beautiful life. Approximately a week ago, I unexpectedly encountered my ex-husband at Walmart. As I turned the corner of one of the aisles, pushing my daughter in the shopping cart, I suddenly found myself face to face with him. It caught me completely off guard and I felt like I couldn't breathe. He greeted me with a simple hi. At that moment my daughter flashed a smile and extended her little hand toward him while mumbling a few words and showing him her toy. He kindly said, "Hello there, beautiful girl, how are you?" Seeing him and my daughter together saddened me deeply and tears welled up in my eyes. I had wished so much for him to be my child's father, but I knew that could never be with a parting wish, he said. "Best of luck to you, Diana, and your beautiful baby girl. Take care now. Then he headed over to the self-checkout area to complete his purchase while I stood there, watching him walk away for the last time. It gave me the closure I needed, even though it wasn't what I truly wanted. I'm sharing this story in the hope of preventing others, both women and men, from repeating my terrible, life-altering mistake. If my experience can help even one person, it would be a blessing. Thank you all for listening, and I wish you the best of luck in your relationships. Diana, I'm a 29-year-old woman and I've been in a relationship with my 30-year-old husband for nearly 6 years. We tied the knot within a year of meeting and we now have 2 kids. He's truly an outstanding individual, good-looking, highly educated with a well-paying job, and he has never betrayed my trust or shown any disrespect in any way. Before the recent events occurred, my close friends and family frequently reminded me how fortunate I am to have met him, and what an incredible guy he is. I used to see us as soulmates. However, about a year ago I made a significant mistake. I went out with a group of friends to celebrate a birthday party, and I got extremely drunk during the evening. There was a man who had been flirting with me all night, and I ended up sleeping with him. It was the first time in many years that I felt so good, and I can't explain why, but I ended up going home with him. Within minutes of realizing the mistake I had made, I quickly ordered a taxi home and tearfully confessed everything to my husband. I was overwhelmed with regret and self-loathing. Initially he remained silent and composed, but he made it clear that he wanted a divorce. However, after my persistent pleas and begging, we eventually decided to seek counseling. During our counseling sessions, he often appeared disconnected, spending his time scrolling on his phone. When asked about his feelings or what he could do to improve the situation, he responded with remarks like divorcing a hoe, maybe, or gave negative answers directed at me. Most of the time he seemed apathetic and remained quiet, even when asked questions or when we tried to involve him in the conversation. I understand the mistake I made, and for the past year I've been doing everything possible to save our marriage. It has reached a point where I've even agreed to engage in sexual activities that I strongly dislike, just to please him. I've taken on all the household responsibilities, including cleaning, cooking, and every single chore, without any help from him. I've done everything he's asked for without any complaints. During his outbursts he hurls hurtful insults at me, sometimes to the point where our children can hear it from their bedrooms. There are moments when he completely ignores me and moves around the house as if I don't exist. However, he always treats our children with love and avoids speaking negatively about me to them, trying to shield them from our arguments. Sometimes, if I refuse to do certain things, regardless of the time, he threatens divorce and abandonment, or he brings up my past infidelity and blames me for our problems. He insists that marrying me was a mistake and resorts to derogatory name-calling. I'm also aware that he's been communicating with other women, and when I confront him about it, he immediately brings up my past infidelity as a way to deflect. I don't have concrete evidence of him meeting someone behind my back, but I simply wish things could return to how they used to be. On one occasion, when I confronted him about a message I saw from another woman on his phone, he forcefully took my hand and led me to the main hall. He pointed at the door and told me that the exit was right there. If I wanted to leave, emphasizing that he didn't care about my thoughts or feelings. I feel like I've lost the caring and loving husband I once had, and he's transformed into a completely different person. I love him deeply and can't envision myself with anyone else. I regret my mistake every single day, and all I want is to have my family back together. I'm not sure if I can salvage this marriage, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I'm not entirely sure what I'm seeking right now. Maybe I just need to vent. I wish I could turn back time and undo all of this. I forgot to mention more details about our therapy sessions. I want to clarify that I took full responsibility for my actions during those sessions and didn't blame him. It wasn't until later when the therapist suggested that my husband might have done things to push me away, which led to my infidelity and his current behavior, that things started to change during therapy. I'm considering switching therapists to give our relationship another chance. I really want this to work. Update. Today I decided to have a conversation with my husband. As many people had pointed out, it seemed like he didn't want to make an effort anymore and just wanted to move on. At first I approached him with the intention of explaining the entire situation, expressing my understanding of his pain, and acknowledging that he might no longer want to work on our marriage and prefers to move forward. I told him that if this is genuinely what he wants, I will accept it and allow him to move on with his life. I made sure to convey that I still love him deeply and always will. He remained silent, gazing at me, then came over and hugged me, and tears welled up in his eyes. I couldn't help but cry too. It was the first time in a long while that I felt a heartfelt, loving hug and saw genuine emotion from him. After what felt like a few minutes of crying and holding each other, he finally let go and asked me to sit down with him. He began by expressing that he still loves me with all his heart and cares deeply for our children. However, he admitted that he struggles to forget and move on from what happened. He explained that he experiences intense, angry moments not only due to his resentment for what I had done, but also because vivid images of my actions keep replaying in his mind, making it hard for him to let go. He confided in me that he had encountered many women who flirted with him over the years and had numerous opportunities to stray from loyalty. However, he emphasized that his love for me and our children always held greater value than fleeting moments of pleasure. He insisted that he could never have done to me what I did to him, because his love for me was too profound to inflict such pain. Hearing him say this made me break down even more. He continued to explain that something inside him was broken and couldn't be repaired. He mentioned that he had been engaging in conversations with other women during these past few months, but had refrained from any physical involvement with them because he didn't feel it was the right course of action. When I suggested that he could move on, it was the first time he felt that I truly grasped the depth of his emotions and how profoundly shattered he was inside. He expressed uncertainty about our future together, but indicated that for the time being he wanted to be single and explore his own life. Perhaps he mentioned we might reconcile in the future, but at this moment he needed to focus on self-improvement separately from me. I assured him that I would agree to sign the divorce papers if he desired a divorce, and that I had no intentions of claiming anything from him. I wanted him to keep what he brought into the marriage, and I had no desire to take that away from him. Although he earned significantly more money than I did, I was adamant about not burdening him with financial support, including child support. Listening to all of this brought him to tears, and he expressed his hope that someday he can find it within himself to forgive me. He believed that some time apart would be beneficial for both of us, allowing us to reflect on our lives. He mentioned that he intends to consult with a lawyer and expects to present the divorce papers in about a week. I have no intentions of pursuing new relationships after the divorce, and I don't desire to do so either. My genuine hope is that he returns to me one day, and we can rebuild our former family. I deeply wish he hadn't found out about that incident. The weight of remorse is heavy, and I feel like I've lost the one person who truly is my soulmate. Alright, that was a fun story. Now let's move on to another exciting one. Stay tuned and let's dive in. It appears that a divorce is in my future. The events I'm about to recount took place 8 years ago, in 2014. For privacy reasons, I'll be using pseudonyms for everyone involved. I'm currently 39 years old and happily married to my wife Jill for the past 4 years. She's 29 years old. We have 2 sons, aged 1 and 3. Additionally, I have 4 older children from my previous marriage to Amber, who is also 39 years old. These older children include 3 boys and 1 girl, aged 17 male, 15 female, 14 male and 10 male. Most of my story revolves around the 10-year-old whom I'll call Seth. Let's rewind about 11 years ago. At that time, my wife Amber and I already had 3 kids and we were expecting our 4th child, Seth. Life was busy but content. We had a young family and I had recently taken on more responsibilities at work. This allowed us to purchase a house, an SUV and a van. And it provided Amber the opportunity to be a stay-at-home mom. However, it also meant I had to work long hours, including weekends. Despite my busy schedule, I always made sure to spend quality time with my family and took on my fair share of childcare and household chores. Throughout our marriage, Amber appeared to be content and often told others that she was. However, there were moments when it seemed like she was overwhelmed. During those times I, along with our parents and her sister, stepped in to provide support. Whenever she needed a break, she could take one. It's important to note that the decision to have 4 children was mutual, with Amber playing a significant role in that choice. Amber gave birth to Seth, and everything seemed fine, though life got even more hectic. Our household was always filled with chaos, especially since Amber decided to get a puppy for our kids. It was mainly my older 3 children who had wanted a dog and had been pestering her about it. Our home was a lively place, bustling with kids, a dog, and frequent visits from extended family. I thoroughly enjoyed the vibrant atmosphere. As Seth grew, it became apparent that he didn't resemble me, my wife, our other children, or anyone in our families. He had blonde hair, striking blue eyes, and a fair complexion, quite distinct from the rest of the family, who had dark hair, brown eyes, and darker skin due to our Italian heritage. I understood that appearances can vary within families, but this difference stuck in my mind. Our parents and friends occasionally made light-hearted jokes, suggesting that Amber might have had an affair with the postman, or something similar. It was all in good humor, and we didn't take it seriously. Over time, Seth's features became even more distinctive. To cut a long story short, before he turned 2, I secretly arranged for a DNA test to determine his parentage. The test results came back indicating that Seth was not my biological son. It was an incredibly painful day, and I cried intensely for obvious reasons. Although I wasn't completely shocked, I contacted the clinic and inquired about the accuracy of these tests. The clinician mentioned that such errors were exceedingly rare, but suggested that we take another test to validate the initial results. We complied, and the second set of results confirmed the same outcome. My life was rapidly unraveling, and I faced the dilemma of what to do next. I understand that many guys might criticize me for this, but my initial plan was to take no action, to simply ignore the situation. I thought I could continue living life as usual to see if I could come to terms with this revelation. I followed this approach for a period of 5 weeks. During this time, I refrained from confronting my wife, behaved normally, and even maintained a regular, intimate relationship with her. However, my thoughts eventually overwhelmed me, and I felt an urgent need to take decisive action before I couldn't handle it anymore. I arranged an appointment with a divorce attorney and provided her with all the details, including the results of the DNA tests. She inquired about my wife's reaction, and I admitted that I hadn't confronted her because I wasn't sure about pursuing a divorce until that moment. The attorney suggested that I confront her with witnesses to hear her side of the story, but I was determined to end the marriage and chose not to follow that advice. I understood that if I confronted her, I might weaken and give her another chance instead of proceeding with the divorce. The attorney inquired if I knew who the affair partner AP was, and I informed her that I didn't. She suggested that I investigate phone records, emails, texts, and so on for potential clues. She clarified that under our state laws, since I was married when Seth was born, I am his legal father, even though he's not my biological child. She further explained that the only slim possibility of being relieved of my parental responsibilities by the court would be if 1. The biological father voluntarily steps forward, or 2. My wife pursues a paternity claim with the biological father. With limited time to conduct this detective work, I decided to hire a private investigator PI recommended by my attorney. In just 1 day of reviewing our computer and cell phone records, the PI successfully identified the affair partner. The evidence collected by the PI revealed that the affair began on a dating site, one of the largest at the time. Amber created a profile under the alias Elsa25, where her bio falsely claimed she was single, had no children, and was seeking casual encounters. The profile remained active on the site, although all the pictures had been removed. Amber had been exchanging messages with multiple men on the site for nearly 3 months. It was truly upsetting. Most of their interactions consisted of casual conversations and mild flirting, except for the man she had the affair with, whom we'll refer to as Bob. He resided 23 miles away and worked the 3 to 11 p.m. shift at a factory, coinciding with Amber's daytime availability for communication and their rendezvous at his apartment. All their interactions took place through the dating site. It's worth mentioning that Seth bears a striking resemblance to Bob. Amber informed Bob that she didn't have a phone, claiming she had lost hers and hadn't replaced it. This was clearly a tactic to avoid being tracked. You can observe from their messages that she abruptly ended contact with him after their 3rd date. Although Bob continued to send her messages, she never responded, and he eventually gave up. Unbeknownst to her, Amber had set up message notifications from the dating site to be sent to a Yahoo.com email account. She never checked the email account but remained signed in. So when the PI conducted a routine check on Yahoo.com, all the emails appeared on the screen. Hiring this investigator turned out to be a wise investment at $950. With the evidence he uncovered and the DNA test results, I had all the proof I needed for an at-fault divorce, and I authorized my attorney to proceed. I had a plan to serve Amber with divorce papers in the presence of both sets of parents. Some might view this as a less confrontational approach, but I had lost trust in my wife by this point, and was concerned she might react irrationally or make false accusations if we were alone. I had informed my parents in advance about the situation so they wouldn't be taken by surprise and could provide me with support. The meeting was highly charged and my nerves were on edge, but I held it together. I started by presenting the DNA test results, and then provided copies of significant messages exchanged between Amber and Bob. Both sets of parents were visibly upset, as was Amber. She looked at me with a dazed expression, wearing a sorrowful, apologetic look, and quietly wept. I believe she experienced a mental break that day, possibly something akin to PTSD, as she hasn't been quite the same since. Once the tension in the room began to subside, Amber expressed her deep remorse and asked for forgiveness. Explaining that she loved me and our family more than anything, I told her I forgave her, but then proceeded to hand her a separation agreement. I explained that I wanted a legal separation lasting 6 months and suggested she stay with her parents for the next 2 weeks to give me some space for contemplation. I explained that after the initial 2 weeks at her parents' place, she could return to our house to complete the legal separation. However, I made it clear that one of my parents would be with us at all times because I no longer trusted her. Following that, I handed her the divorce agreement and informed her that she needed to hire a lawyer. This is when she became inconsolable. Her mother inquired if there was any way to avoid divorce, to which I firmly responded no. Her mother then argued that her actions, while terrible, weren't significant enough to end a great marriage and disrupt a beautiful family. I countered by saying she cheated, had another man's baby, and lied to me for over 2 years. How much more significant can you get than that? Eventually they left, and we proceeded with the separation, with my wife pleading with me multiple times a day not to go through with the divorce. During the separation period, my attorney managed to contact Bob. He expressed deep remorse, claiming he had no knowledge that Elsa Amber was married. He explained that he had no intentions of breaking up a family, and was struggling financially, making it impossible for him to support a child. It became evident that he wouldn't voluntarily assume paternal responsibilities. Regarding the reason for the affair, Amber's sister informed me that Amber claimed she created the dating profile merely to seek attention from men, and had no intention of being unfaithful. She mentioned feeling insecure about her appearance after gaining weight following the birth of our 3 children. She wanted to know if other men still found her attractive. It's worth noting that I had never criticized her weight or looks. I consistently reassured her that she was beautiful because in my eyes, she truly was. Fast forward 8 months and our divorce was officially concluded. My attorney requested an equal division of assets, but omitted alimony from the settlement due to her infidelity and the affair child. Child support was only sought for my 3 biological children, even though it was expected that the judge might require support for Seth since I was his legal father. Ultimately, the judge ruled that I must pay child support for Seth as well. However, alimony was removed from the settlement due to the infidelity and the child born from the affair. The judge allowed me to retain the house as part of the agreement, but granted Amber 51% primary custody. After delivering the verdict, the judge asked if Amber and I had any questions or comments. Amber took the opportunity to express her remorse once more, emphasizing her love for me and her hope that we might reunite someday. I then addressed the judge and expressed my gratitude for her thoughtful verdict and for granting me the opportunity to speak. I went on to highlight what I perceived as an injustice in our state's family court laws, emphasizing their apparent bias against men. I questioned the fairness of a situation where a woman cheats, has a child with another man, deceives her husband about it, and yet not only is she awarded primary custody of his children, but he's also obligated to financially support a child that isn't biologically his. In response, the judge conveyed her understanding of my perspective, but clarified that she follows the law and prioritizes the well-being of children. She explained that in this case, it was in the child's best interest for me to continue being Seth's legal father. She commended me as a good man and a great father, which factored into her decision to grant me 49% custody and allow me to keep the family home. The judge emphasized that the only way the court could relieve me of my legal parental responsibility would be if the biological father voluntarily stepped forward and assumed that responsibility. She also noted that even if such a scenario were to unfold, the court would conduct a thorough assessment, evaluating the biological father's mental and financial fitness before making any decisions. I then informed the judge that I had already provided the court with the biological father's name and address. I inquired if that information was sufficient to at least initiate a court order for a DNA test. The judge clarified that this was a civil matter and that the courts typically don't intervene in this manner. She explained that either my ex-wife or I would need to persuade the biological father to voluntarily come forward, or my ex-wife could file a paternity lawsuit against him. At this point, my ex-wife's attorney chimed in, expressing her client's reluctance to involve another man in her child's life, asserting that Seth already had a wonderful father in me. I concluded my statement feeling like everyone in the courtroom was essentially telling me tough luck, deal with it. I wanted to emphasize this courtroom exchange to encourage any man considering marriage to thoroughly research the laws in their state. The hearing came to a close and I was officially divorced. I proceeded to fulfill my child support obligations and continued to be the best father I could be to all of my children, including Seth. Despite the circumstances, I treated him no differently because he was my son and I was the only father he had ever known. I loved him. A few years later, I met and married Jill and we had our 2 boys. Now I have a total of 6 children and couldn't be happier. I express gratitude to the Lord every day for blessing me with my children and for bringing Jill into my life at the right time. As for Amber, I've already forgiven her a long time ago. These days, she primarily focuses on being a mother and taking care of her elderly parents. Since our divorce, she has gained a considerable amount of weight and was recently diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, requiring her to take daily medication for it. Before I became serious with Jill, Amber made numerous attempts to win me back. She even went as far as trying to manipulate the kids into convincing me, but I quickly put a stop to that tactic. Over the years, she has apologized countless times, acknowledging that the affair was the worst thing she's ever done. We're on good terms now and co-parenting with her has been quite smooth. Amber is planning to attend school to become an LPN as she will need a stable source of income once the child support starts expiring in a few years. When each child turns 18, she's still driving the 11-year-old van she received in the divorce settlement, but it will soon need to be replaced. Over the years, Amber has dated a few older men, but nothing has turned into a serious relationship. I suppose it's challenging to date when you're a woman with 4 kids. That's everything I wanted to share. Once more, I'll leave you with this piece of advice. If you're a man considering marriage, take a moment to pause, gather your thoughts, and ensure you have a wonderful partner. Then, before making a potentially life-altering decision, be sure to familiarize yourself with the family laws in your state. It's a step you won't regret in the future. Well, folks, that will be all for today. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Stay safe, everyone.